The City of Columbus has recently unveiled a $3.5 million initiative aimed to transform the city's art landscape. Today on City Chat. From the Department of Development, Deputy Director Jennifer Fening is here with us to further discuss this transformative plan dedicated to embracing our vibrant community. Jennifer, thank you for joining us on City Chat today.
Thanks for having me.
So we kind of have like a hot topic here, and we're so excited to have you here to explain to us about all of these initiatives. What is the purpose of the Reimagining Columbus initiative announced by the city?
So in 2020, more than 100 monuments and statues across the country were taken out of public display, including the city's Christopher Columbus statue that used to reside on the front steps of City Hall. And so in response to this, the Mellon Foundation out of New York created a project called the Monuments Project. It's a $250 million 5-year plan aimed at recontextualizing statues from our past and monuments from our past, and also at uplifting stories that haven't been represented in our commemorative landscape before. And so just in June, they announced 9 cities that were becoming part of their funding platform, and the City of Columbus is one of them. So we've been awarded a $2 million grant that is intended to engage the community around the future of the Christopher Columbus statue and really look at how we could use the statue to explain the history of Christopher Columbus and also uplift stories that haven't been told in the telling of our city's history before.
Yeah, that's amazing. But like, what would this process look like?
So through this $2 million grant, we'll have the resources for a great deal of community engagement. First, we'll also have the opportunity to engage historians who have spent their life's work studying Christopher Columbus and unpacking his legacy and the impact of his expeditions and everything that came after them. So we'll have the opportunity to work with these historians to learn more about Christopher Columbus and host community education events about his legacy. And then we'll have the opportunity to talk to communities about how they respond to the statue and also understand more of their personal histories. And we'll be able to take all of that we learn from the community and work with architects and designers. We're going to be working with Indigenous Design Studio and Architecture, which is a Navajo woman-owned architecture firm out of Albuquerque,
Whoa.
as well as designers and architects from here in Columbus and in Ohio, to synthesize everything we hear from the community and process their experiences to design a space. And our intention for this space is to create a space where we display the Christopher Columbus statue, but also share more about his history and about his legacy, and also uplift some of those stories that haven't been told when we talk about Christopher Columbus.
Yeah. When it comes to the Christopher Columbus statue, why did you guys decide to just to continue this story? Why not just retire the statue at whole?
You know, the statue itself has a really unique history. The statue was a gift from our sister city of Genoa in 1955. And if you go back in history, this is a time when our Italian-American community faced discrimination of their own and felt in some ways on the outside looking in when it came to the Columbus community. And the gift of the statue and its prominent position on the City Hall campus felt like acceptance for them. And so there's this really unique opportunity to tell that story, not just Columbus's story, but tell the story of this community. It's also an opportunity to tell the story of the indigenous population that lived in Ohio that was removed from the state during our community's history. And as you look at more contemporary history, to also talk about communities of color who saw statues of colonialists as markers of oppression. And so those are the kinds of stories that we want to hear and unpack and bring together in the way we consider a new space and the way that we talk about Christopher Columbus and what he means to us as a city called Columbus, and how we create a narrative of what that means to us as a community and who we are and what are our aspirations for the future.
Yeah, it's just really, really cool that from this Christopher Columbus statue that so many other stories and so many good things have come from it. And so I think that's really awesome that you guys are taking this perspective and this process to
That's really our aspiration, is how can this become a place of shared understanding and empathy building, that we could kind of create this space for the community to tell all of our stories.
That's amazing. So in addition to the grant, the city also announced a $1.5 million funding for new public art. Can you tell us what that will go towards?
Yes. So our intention for the new public space for the statue is to find a new space in the community for that piece and to look at brand new public art for the City Hall campus. So while we're hearing from the community about their lived experiences, about their personal histories, and about their aspirations for the future, we're going to bring that all together into a public art plan for the City Hall campus. And so the City of Columbus is announcing $1.5 million in funding to create new public art to capture that spirit and bring those recommendations to life. And this would be the largest single public art project the city has invested in its history.
You guys are also a finalist for the Bloomberg Art Challenge. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, so separate from the Mellon Foundation funding, the Bloomberg Public Art Challenge was announced earlier this year, and it's up to $1 million for temporary public art that comments on a public issue. And so the City of Columbus put forth an application to do public art on redlining, and more specifically on the practice of greenlining. Go back to the discriminatory practice of redlining, which really helped to qualify people for loans back in the 60s. And though there were maps drawn that were racially based of communities that were that banks deemed better for investment than others, and so oftentimes communities of color were redlined. And we wanted to create art on how that discriminatory practice is still affecting our community today and manifesting in the housing crisis, the housing shortage that we're facing right now. And so our concept is called greenlining. And the intention is, so often when we talk about redlining, we talk about the harm that was created in communities of color, but we don't do enough to talk about how the practice of greenlining manufactured privilege in white communities. And so what we intend to do is create public art on just that in our greenline communities. And so our intention is to put public art in Columbus's greenline communities, but also the city of Bexley, which was greenlined, has partnered with us, and the McConnell Art Center has partnered with us as well. They're in Worthington, which was blue lined. And so together we intend to create public art that reflects the fact that privilege was created in these communities, and it's intended to create a commentary on who's being left in and who's being included and who's being left out of Columbus's success as we experience our economic growth today.
There seems to be a lot going on in Columbus related to public art. How does this relate to the Greater Columbus Greater Art Initiative?
So beyond the public art plan for the City Hall campus, the City of Columbus is actually the largest city in the country that doesn't have a public art plan for the city as a whole. And what a public art plan can do for us is give us recommendations for where should our art go, what does it express, how does it get funded, how does it get maintained, who's responsible for all of that, and what is our 10-year vision for our public art. So the City of Columbus and Franklin County have jointly funded a public art plan that the Greater Columbus Arts Council, GCAC, is going to create for us. They're leading the creation of this plan. And one thing that I'm particularly excited about is this plan will come with a DEI strategy, a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy for our public art. So it'll give us recommendations of how can we diversify the people who are creating our public art, the people who are represented in our public art, and where our public art goes and where it's placed in our community. So I'm really looking forward to those recommendations that we can act on well into our future.
Does the city renew public art every 10 years? Or?
This will be the first time we've created kind of a 10-year strategy. We've had individual initiatives from time to time, but this will be the first time we take a really long-range view and also look at how does the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector collaborate, and what are all of our roles in bringing more public art to the community.
Oh my gosh. So how can residents get involved with these initiatives?
Yes, so the public art plan being led by GCAC, the development is already underway. The community engagement has already begun. It kicked off at the Arts Festival in June. More than 1,000 people have taken a survey to give us information about what they want to see in their public art. You can participate in the survey by going to Take Part Columbus, and you can also learn more about some events that will be happening in support of this community-wide plan. And then as it relates to the work for the Mellon Foundation Monuments Project in City Hall, we're doing some planning right now. We expect that community engagement will begin in the winter, but right now you can go to reimaginingcolumbus.com. You can share your comments with us and learn more about that plan.
Generally, do most cities have communities participate in this like public art plan, or is that just something that's unique to Columbus? Or?
It's a best practice to really bring all the voices to the table. You know, in the past it might have been private benefactors, but this is really going to be a community effort. If this is our public art, how does it speak for all of us? How does it represent our collective vision, our aspirations for our future, and communicate about who we are to the world through our art? So we're really excited to keep moving these initiatives forward, to keep raising the bar for public art in our community.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for all this information.
Thank you for having me. We're really excited to be putting this forward.
I'm Josie Smith. Thanks for watching City Chat on CTV.